I want to share with you a little experiment that I've been doing for more than 20 years now. As a person who's often called upon to present seminars about stress elimination based on the three principles of mind, consciousness, and thought all over the world, it occurred to me to just start trying to help people share the understanding of how easily we are deceived by our own thinking and how easily we're drawn into ideas that were just made up, especially when there are a lot of people who think the same sort of thing. So I started talking about, where does the idea of normal come from? What makes something normal? It's an idea that very few people ever question. We just say, well, that's the way it is. It's normal. It's what everybody thinks. It's how things go. So I decided to see if we could do a little conversation about stress around that, and it's been very, very interesting, and I wanted to share it with you here. It starts with this simple chart. On one axis, you have the percentage of people, which I'll explain in more detail, and then across the horizontal axis at the bottom you have a range of feeling states, from a state of stress, SOS, to peace of mind. And when I would start with people, I'd describe the state of stress as, at the very extreme end of that line, a state in which you were fraught, filled with anxiety and insecurity, unable to control the flow and the circular nature of your thinking, unable to sort out your thinking, feeling overwhelmed, feeling desperate, feeling frantic, the kinds of extremes that we experience. And then looking at that line and saying everybody's got to be somewhere, that in varying degrees, as we move to the right on the line, you get to total peace of mind, which I would describe as being at peace within your own skin, feeling quiet inside, feeling your thinking is appropriate and moving in sync with life, that you're getting the thoughts you need at the time you need them, that you have a peaceful and easy feeling about whatever you're involved in life. So that would be the extreme of peace of mind. And I'm very careful to say I'm not suggesting the peace of mind in the sense of, lying in a hammock for hours on end. I'm talking about peace of mind as a natural way to be in life as we're going about our daily activities. A quiet mind in a positive feeling state, feeling like you know what you're doing. So then I would ask people, just looking at your life, what you consider to be your world, and that could be your family and immediate friends, it could be your community, it could be your state, your region, your nation, or the whole world, whatever you think about as your world. And the people that you're aware of in that world, where would you put people on this range? What curve would you draw to show where all the people you know or can think of fall between a total state of stress and a complete peace of mind? What percentage of people are what percentage stressed most of the time? And I'd give people just a few minutes to answer the question. Over time, I was surprised at how consistent the responses were. From Australia to Canada to England to any one of a number of cities in North America, over and over again, the response that I was getting was pretty much the same. The majority of people sitting in my training room said at least 50 to 75% of the people that they could think of would fall between 50 and 80% stressed. So what they were describing was a world in which they would say the majority of people that they interact with, the lawyers, the policemen, the teachers, the ministers, the bus drivers, the people in the grocery store, their neighbors, their friends, their colleagues, that the people in their world were mostly stressed. And I found that fascinating. So I'd ask people to reflect on those questions. If most of the people that we think of as our world are usually more than 50% stressed, would that just start looking like regular life to us? Would it make sense to us that stress is just part of our existence? We have to deal with it, accept it, but we can't change it. Would that influence the kinds of feelings that we would tolerate in ourselves and others? Would we set the bar pretty low? Say, well, stress is just part of life, so of course I'm going to feel bad sometimes, or a lot of the time, or everybody else feels bad. And then would we become resigned to less than optimal health and well-being and just call it life? So take a few minutes and reflect on those questions. Well, generally, people would conclude rather quickly that they had just defined what we would call normal. That what we would call normal is just a way of thinking about the world, a set of thoughts that we take as ordinary and real. We're so used to seeing the world that way through those thoughts that we don't question them. We don't ask ourselves if that's got to be true. We just say, well, that's normal. And we would talk about what we would have said was normal in terms of stress at different points in our lives, and of course it would depend on the age of people in the group. But at my age, I can remember when stress was not a part of the culture vocabulary. The idea of stress was unheard of. So when people would be upset or in a frantic or anxious state of mind, people would say, well, they're having a bad day, or she got up on the wrong side of the bed, or they'll get over it. It's just grumpy. It wasn't the serious thing that it's become. And so to the degree that there was no way to describe it and people weren't really thinking about it much, and you know, your head wasn't filled with a lot of ideas about what it meant to be a success and to be a stressed person, and was stress good or bad, and all of the questions that have since come to kind of dominate our conversations about stress, it wasn't really on people's minds very much. And when something isn't on your mind, it's not in your life. There was a time when people just accepted the idea that various feeling states would come and go. And normal was experiencing life through many different feeling states. It's neither good nor bad. It doesn't really matter that we see normal as different now. It's just important to realize that the prevailing views of the world change over time, but we don't notice it because we're part of it. We're part of the thought-created process that evolves views of life. So we're looking at normal now and saying, well, what are we going to do about that? I mean, we've all accepted stress. We don't really know where it comes from. We suspect it comes from all the terrible things that happen to people and how agitated we all are and how many pressures we have on us and all of the bad news and blah, 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 blah. So we have this whole sort of scenario that we create that we would describe as the generator of stress. And we've defined normal as feeling upset about that. But I want to question that, because the assumption behind that is that the things, the stuff that's happening outside of ourselves in life is making us think and feel certain ways, that we're essentially the victim of our circumstances, and that we're always in reaction. And I don't think that's true. I'm quite certain that it doesn't make sense. So what if it was within our power to move that curve? What if peace of mind began to look like normal? A new normal? how different would our daily life be? How different would our interactions be with other people? How well might we be able to listen? How much more tolerant would people be if they were at peace and not insecure, and they could look at other people fresh? How much more civil might our conversations be if every person engaged in dialogue, even when they disagreed, was calm and confident and open and sincere and not preoccupied with their own thinking? How would moving our understanding of what's possible for normal everyday life in terms of the state of mind in which most people spend their time, how different, if we saw it differently, would the world become for us? And that's a question that I care deeply about, and that's why I'm sharing this with you. And I'm going to tell you a simple way that I think that we could move that curve. Most of us would agree that when we understand how something works, it kind of takes the fear out of it. And that includes everything from being able to fix your own car and do simple maintenance to understanding how your computer equipment works, to all kinds of routine things in life. But it applies also to our own psychology. When people get an insight into how their own thinking works, into what's really going on with us psychologically, it takes all the fear and anxiety out of it. And think about this example. If you were taking care of a small child, let's say a 5 or 6 year old, and in the middle of the night that child awakened screaming, and you ran in the room and the child was going on and on, oh, there's a monster, it's a terrible monster, I saw the monster. You wouldn't ask about the monster. Intuitively, you would know, number one, there is no monster. The child made it up. It's a dream. And none of us will get back to sleep if we explore the details. So what we tend to do is, rather than discuss the monster or try to fight the monster off or deal with the monster or in any way address the monster as a reality, we explain. We would say to the child, you know, we all have dreams. It's perfectly normal. And when you dream, sometimes it looks so real because you're like dreaming is like a movie in your head. And so you were probably having a dream and maybe read stories about monsters or somebody talked about it today or something. So don't worry about it. There's no real monster. It's an imaginary monster. And our imaginations are wonderful. We can imagine anything. So let's get a glass of juice and go back to bed. I don't think anyone would disagree that that's probably the best way to handle the monster. And yet, as we get older in life, we lose sight of the fact that the monster is whatever we've made up and found to be upsetting. So we have daymares as well as nightmares. And the daymares are all of our negative thinking taken seriously over time, that as a result of which we get all worked up. We get in a low, anxious, fearful, frantic state of mind. We lose our peace of mind. But understanding, just the simple understanding that our thinking is created from the energy that flows through us, the same energy that drives our circulation and helps cuts to heal and keeps us going in life, that is the energy that we use psychologically to imagine things, to create thoughts, to create images within our own heads. And a part of our humanity is that we become conscious of those thoughts, that they carry with them a sense of reality, the feeling that is produced by the thoughts. And when we understand that that's what's happening, that we're creating life from the inside out. And that's all it is. It gives us freedom from being stressed out or made anxious or worked up about our most frightening thinking. Because once you know where it comes from, that it's our own imagination hard at work, and that's all it is, that we're using the beautiful energy of life to create images, and we can create anything. We can create the most wonderful things, and we can create the most horrifying things. But no matter what we create, it's our creation. It will pass. And we're designed to return to a peaceful state of mind. That as it passes, other thoughts come to mind, and then other thoughts come to mind. And then we live on kind of a sine curve, and up and down. Some thoughts are more helpful than others. But it doesn't matter, because all it is the beautiful human imagination that carries us through life, hard at work. And if people could come to understand that very deeply, we really would be able to move what we call normal.